Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire under fire. Wars erupted at the borders, a deadly plague swept through the cities, and even his closest allies betrayed him. He lost children, endured endless nights of uncertainty, and carried the weight of millions on his shoulders. Most men would have collapsed, but Marcus did not. He remained calm, steady, and unshaken. What gave him such unbreakable strength? It wasn't luck. It wasn't power. It was a hidden Stoic secret, something most people overlook today, that allowed him to stand firm no matter the storm. And once you see it, you'll never view pressure the same way again. Marcus Aurelius did not live in peaceful times. When he became emperor of Rome, he inherited a world on the edge of collapse. The empire was stretched thin across vast frontiers, constantly at war with invading tribes in the north and restless provinces elsewhere. Famine threatened the cities, corruption infected politics, and a deadly plague swept through the population, killing thousands every day. On top of that, his own household brought no comfort. He buried several of his children before they reached adulthood, and he lived with the sting of betrayal from those closest to him. Imagine the pressure of knowing that every decision you made could mean the survival or ruin of the greatest empire on earth. For most people, such weight would crush them. They would lash out, break down, or drown in despair. Yet Marcus did not falter. He carried himself with quiet strength, showing no sign of collapse, even when surrounded by chaos. He wrote to himself in the still hours of the night, reminding his mind to stay steady when the world seemed to burn around him. This is where the story begins, not with a man born unshakable, but with someone who learned how to remain calm under pressure, when nearly everything in his life gave him reason to break. And the question is not whether Marcus faced hardship. He did. The question is how he endured it, and what secret allowed him to stand tall in the face of forces far greater than himself. When people hear the word Stoic, they often imagine someone who feels nothing, who hides every trace of emotion behind a stone face. To many, Stoicism means coldness or detachment, as if the goal were to shut down the human heart entirely. But this is not what Marcus practiced, and it is not what the philosophy teaches. Stoicism is not about pretending pain or joy don't exist. It is about recognizing that events themselves carry no judgment. Only the mind gives them meaning. A storm, for example, is neither good nor bad. It is simply a storm. If your plans for a picnic are ruined by rain, you may call it a disaster. But the truth is, the rain is only water falling from the sky. The suffering comes from how you interpret it. This is the heart of Stoicism, the discipline of perception. Marcus did not erase his emotions. He learned to master how he responded to them. Grief, fear, anger. These feelings arose in him just as they arise in us. What made him different was that he trained himself not to be ruled by them. He understood that power lies in choosing how to see an event, rather than being carried away by it. This is why he could face war without despair, betrayal without bitterness, and death without panic. Most of us allow the smallest inconvenience to dictate our mood, but Marcus practiced turning every challenge into an opportunity for strength. That was the essence of Stoicism, not to stop feeling, but to see clearly. The hidden Stoic secret that Marcus relied on was the discipline of perception. At its core, this practice teaches that events themselves are neutral. It is our judgment that paints them as good or bad. Marcus reminded himself constantly, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This was not empty philosophy. It was his shield in moments when everything seemed unbearable. When the plague ravaged Rome, he did not curse fate. Instead, he saw it as a reminder that human life is fragile, that each day is a gift not to be wasted. When enemies rose against him, he did not see them as curses from the gods, but as opportunities to act with justice and courage. By reframing what happened around him, Marcus stripped events of their power to wound his spirit. The world could throw chaos at him, but the meaning of that chaos remained in his hands. This is why he could endure when others broke. The discipline of perception is not about ignoring reality. It is about interpreting it in a way that strengthens rather than weakens you. Imagine facing a setback and asking not, "Why me?" but "What can this teach me?" That is the shift Marcus made. It was his hidden practice, his inner alchemy, turning every hardship into training for his soul. This discipline is what allowed him to stay calm under pressure, and it is what we often overlook when we let circumstances dictate our peace. During the long and grueling Marcomannic Wars, Marcus Aurelius was tested in ways few rulers had ever been. The northern tribes pressed hard against Rome's borders, bringing defeat after defeat to an army already exhausted by years of conflict. Supplies ran low, soldiers grew restless, and the empire itself seemed stretched to the breaking point. Any other leader might have panicked, seen only disaster in the setbacks, and lost the loyalty of his men. But Marcus refused to give in to despair. He treated each hardship not as a curse, but as part of the duty he had been called to fulfill. To him, war was not misfortune. It was the role he had been given by nature and by fate, and his task was to play it with dignity. Imagine the sight of an emperor, weary from nights without sleep, standing among his soldiers on the cold frontier, not with rage or fear in his eyes, but with calm resolve. That presence alone gave strength to his men, because calm in chaos is contagious. What they saw was not a ruler cracking under the weight of pressure, but a man steady enough to hold them together when everything else was falling apart. Marcus showed that discipline of perception is not merely an idea written in books. It can be lived on the battlefield, in the mud and the blood, where fear is real and danger constant. He transformed what others saw as unbearable into something he accepted as necessary, and in doing so, he became unshakable. His strength came not from force of arms, but from force of mind, and that was the hidden victory he won again and again. Most of us today do not face invading armies or the collapse of empires, yet we often crumble under pressures far smaller than those Marcus endured. A single insult online can ruin our mood for hours. Getting stuck in traffic can spark anger as though we've been deeply wronged. A failed exam, a missed opportunity, or a harsh word from a boss feels like the end of the world. Why does this happen? Because we see these events not as they are, but as disasters. We let our perception turn inconveniences into catastrophes. The human mind has not changed much since the time of Marcus. What has changed is how we train it, or rather, how little we train it at all. Marcus practiced daily, shaping his perception so that the worst trials could not break him. We, on the other hand, allow the smallest troubles to dictate our peace. The truth is, pressure itself is not the problem. The problem is how we choose to see it. Marcus saw war, betrayal, and plague as opportunities to practice patience, justice, and resilience. We see a delay at the airport and treat it as a personal tragedy. The difference is not in the weight of the burden, but in the strength of the perspective. If the Emperor of Rome could remain calm with the fate of millions pressing down on him, then surely we can face the challenges of modern life without falling apart. The same human mind that he trained is the mind we carry today. His secret reminds us that we are not powerless. We can learn to master perception, and in doing so, we can stand steady where we now stumble. Stoicism was never meant to remain in thought alone. The discipline of perception must flow naturally into the discipline of action. Marcus understood that once you see things clearly, you must then act rightly, without hesitation or despair. When overwhelmed by problems larger than himself, he did not waste energy wishing the world were different. Instead, he asked, "What is within my control right now?" During the wars, instead of sinking into fear about Rome's uncertain future, he directed his focus toward practical steps, improving supply lines, reorganizing his troops, strengthening morale, and maintaining justice among his people. He could not control whether enemies rose against him, but he could control how he prepared his army and how he carried himself before them. This is what it means to act with reason rather than with panic. Stoicism teaches that it is not enough to accept hardship with calm. We must also respond with purposeful effort. If you lose your job, you cannot control the loss, but you can control how quickly you adapt, how earnestly you seek a new path. If someone slanders you, you cannot stop their words, but you can live in such a way that your character speaks louder than rumors. Marcus wrote to himself that a person should waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. B1. Action is the measure of philosophy. Calmness alone would not have saved Rome. It was calmness put into action that did. This is why Stoicism endures. It transforms thoughts into deeds and fear into disciplined effort. Perhaps one of the greatest tests of Marcus's strength came not from foreign enemies, but from within his own empire. A trusted general, Avidius Cassius, declared himself emperor while Marcus was still alive, seizing power in the east. For any ruler, this was the ultimate betrayal, a knife in the back from someone once loyal. The easy response would have been rage and revenge. Marcus could have ordered Cassius hunted down and executed, using the betrayal as a chance to show his might. Instead, he responded in a way that stunned even his closest advisors. He refused to meet treachery with vengeance. He told his men that Cassius acted according to his own understanding, and that anger would only add to the harm already done. Marcus even expressed the wish that Cassius might live so that Rome could be spared further bloodshed. When the rebellion ended without Marcus lifting a sword, it was not weakness, it was mastery. He understood that the true measure of strength is not in crushing your enemies, but in mastering your own impulses. In betrayal, he saw not only the folly of another man, but also a chance to practice patience, mercy, and justice. Pressure does not define a person. What defines us is our response. Marcus showed that even the deepest wound from a friend could be turned into an opportunity for virtue. His calm forgiveness did more than restore order to Rome. It proved that no act of treachery could shake the fortress of his mind. There were burdens Marcus could not change, no matter how powerful he was. He could command armies, pass laws, and govern an empire, but he could not stop death. He buried children he loved, watched friends die, and lived through a plague that stole countless lives. To resist these realities would have been to fight against nature itself. The Stoic discipline of will taught him another path: acceptance. Not passive surrender, but an active agreement with the order of the world. He reminded himself that everything that happens is woven into the fabric of nature, and that what befalls one person has always befallen countless others before. Sickness, loss, and death are not punishments. They are simply part of being human. By embracing this truth, Marcus freed himself from the torment of asking, "Why me?" He replaced bitterness with understanding. When misfortune came, he told himself it was not an enemy, but a teacher showing him how to endure with dignity. This discipline of will is perhaps the hardest of all, because it demands that we release our grip on the illusion of control. Yet in doing so, Marcus found serenity. What terrified others, the thought of death, the certainty of suffering, became to him reminders of what truly matters: to live well in the time we are given. He could meet each day, even the darkest, with calm, because he accepted that nothing in life was promised and that everything could be taken. In that acceptance lay his unshakable strength. The trials Marcus faced may feel distant to us, but the same pressures take shape in our everyday lives. We do not command legions on the battlefield, yet students walk into exam halls feeling the weight of war in their chests. We may not face generals declaring themselves emperors, but office politics and broken friendships can feel like betrayals just as sharp. The plague that ravaged Rome may seem far away, yet illness, uncertainty, and the fear of losing loved ones remain a part of our world. What Marcus practiced in the palace and on the frontier, we can practice in the classroom, the workplace, and the home. The discipline of perception teaches us to see a failed grade not as a life-destroying disaster, but as feedback, a chance to learn and improve. The discipline of action reminds us that gossip at work is not something to rage against, but something to outlive through consistent integrity. The discipline of will helps us face illness, setbacks, and loss without drowning in despair, reminding us that much is outside our control and that acceptance brings peace. Our struggles are smaller in scale, but not in significance, because to the human heart, pain is always personal. The same mind that Marcus trained to stay steady is the mind we carry within us. The question is not whether we will face pressure, we will. The question is whether we will let it break us, or whether we will practice the same hidden secret that allowed an emperor to stand strong when everything seemed to fall apart. Marcus often wrote about what he called the inner citadel. He pictured the mind as a fortress, a stronghold no enemy could breach unless he allowed it. Armies could surround the city, disease could sweep through the streets, friends could turn against him, but none of these could enter the inner citadel without his consent. This was his most powerful defense. When insults were hurled at him, he remembered that words have no power unless he grants them meaning. When the empire suffered setbacks, he reminded himself that only his judgment could label them as disasters. The inner citadel is built not of stone, but of clarity. It is the habit of guarding the mind against invasion by fear, anger, or despair. For Marcus, this fortress was always within reach, no matter where he stood, whether on the battlefield or alone in his tent at night. The world could wound his body and shake his empire, but his inner citadel remained untouched because he chose what to admit through its gates. We too carry this same fortress within us, though most leave its doors wide open. We allow the careless comment of a stranger, the sting of rejection, or the anxiety of tomorrow to march in and seize control. Marcus shows us that strength is not about avoiding hardship, but about defending the one place that can never be taken, our own reasoned mind. The question is not whether storms will come, but whether we will keep our citadel closed to them, holding fast to the peace that belongs to us alone. The discipline Marcus practiced sounds simple when written on a page, but living it each day was anything but easy. He admitted in his writings that he often woke in the morning with reluctance, tempted to stay in bed and avoid the burdens of the day. He confessed to feeling anger, sorrow, and weariness, just like anyone else. Stoicism did not erase his humanity. It demanded that he wrestle with it constantly. This is the true challenge of practicing Stoicism. Our instincts push us toward blame when something goes wrong, toward anger when we are insulted, and toward fear when the future is uncertain. The path Marcus chose was not to follow those instincts blindly, but to pause, to see clearly, and to respond with reason. That pause is where the struggle lies. It takes training, repetition, and discipline to catch yourself before lashing out or sinking into despair. Marcus knew that strength is not won in grand moments of triumph, but in countless small victories over the self. Each time he chose patience over anger, duty over comfort, clarity over panic, he was reinforcing the fortress of his mind. Each time he failed, he reminded himself to return to the path without self-pity, without delay. This is what makes Stoicism demanding. It asks for daily effort, not occasional inspiration. Yet this is also why it works. Just as the body grows stronger through repeated exercise, the mind grows resilient through repeated practice. Marcus's greatness was not that he was unshakable by nature, but that he trained himself to stand firm, one choice at a time. One of the most powerful tools Marcus used to strengthen his mind was writing. The book we now call Meditations was never meant to be published. It was his private journal, a place where he spoke to himself with honesty, reminding, correcting, and guiding his own thoughts. In those pages, he rehearsed the discipline of perception, action, and will. He wrote that death is natural, that anger harms the one who holds it, that control lies only within the mind. Each entry was like a training session, sharpening his ability to face the world with calm. Journaling was not simply reflection, it was practice. By writing down the truth each morning or evening, Marcus was building a habit of seeing clearly, of reminding himself of what mattered most. In this way, his journal became a weapon against despair, a shield against panic, and a compass pointing him back to virtue whenever he strayed. Today, we often underestimate the power of this simple act. We carry endless thoughts in our minds, letting them swirl into confusion or anxiety. Putting them on paper forces clarity. It allows us to confront our fears, test our beliefs, and anchor ourselves to reason. This is why journaling has endured as a Stoic exercise for centuries. It is not about keeping a record of events, but about training the mind to see them rightly. Marcus's hidden secret was not just the philosophy he studied, but the discipline he practiced through his pen. And that same tool is available to us. A notebook can become our own fortress, helping us build the same steadiness that carried an emperor through the storms of his life. In the end, the true secret Marcus carried was not armies, wealth, or imperial power. Those things could be taken in an instant. His real strength was the mastery of perception, the ability to meet each event not with despair but with reason. This is what allowed him to remain calm when the empire trembled, to forgive when betrayed, and to endure when struck by loss. His victories on the battlefield secured Rome for a time, but his victory over himself secured a legacy that has lasted for centuries. The hidden Stoic secret was not escape from hardship, but transformation of it. To Marcus, challenges were not curses, but exercises, training grounds for the soul. He understood that pressure is not an enemy, but a teacher, that suffering is not meaningless, but an invitation to grow stronger. This is why he could write in his journal, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." His life proved those words true. When you look at your own struggles, what would change if you saw them not as obstacles but as opportunities to build resilience? What if every failure became a lesson, every insult a chance to practice patience, every loss a reminder to cherish what remains? This was Marcus's secret. He could not choose the storms that came, but he chose how to meet them. And in that choice he found a strength greater than any throne. His empire may have passed away, but the fortress of his mind remains a model for us all. The story of Marcus Aurelius is not simply the tale of an emperor, it is the living proof of what Stoicism truly means. At the heart of the philosophy are three disciplines: perception, action, and will. Perception teaches us to see events without distortion, to strip away the judgments that make them heavier than they are. Action reminds us to respond with reason and virtue, to do what is right, even when it is difficult. Will calls us to accept what cannot be changed, to align ourselves with nature rather than fight against it. Marcus carried these disciplines with him through war, betrayal, plague, and personal grief. They did not remove the weight of his burdens, but they gave him the strength to carry them without breaking. The lesson for us is timeless. Pressure will come to every life. Hardship is certain. But these things do not define us. How we see them, how we act within them, and how we accept their inevitability. That is what shapes our character. Marcus showed that true strength is not loud or violent, but steady and grounded. He was not unshaken because he was born stronger than others, but because he trained his mind daily to stand firm. His life reminds us that calm is not a gift, it is a discipline. Peace is not found in avoiding trials, but in facing them with reason. And resilience is not the absence of pain, but the presence of wisdom in the midst of it. If an emperor under endless pressure could find such steadiness, then so can we. If you found Marcus's secret powerful, wait until you see how Epictetus trained his students to face suffering. Click here to watch.